California, the Golden State, a land that shines with promise and beauty, a place that has drawn dreamers from across the world, a place of sunshine and beaches and golden hills. People think of Hollywood lights, palm trees that sway in the wind, and fortunes waiting to be made. They see the glamour, the gold, the future. But there is another California, one that few talk about, one that hides in the shadows of the mountains and whispers in the fog that drifts across old towns. This California is not golden, it is haunted. It is filled with stories of miners who never left, of settlers who died too soon, of villages where tragedy struck and the echoes never faded. It is a land where the past still walks among the living, where the dead refuse to stay buried, where shadows follow you down empty streets, and where a single glance can make your blood run cold. Imagine yourself driving late at night, the road empty, the air thick with silence. The headlights cut through the darkness, and in the corner of your eye you see her. A woman in white, standing by the road, still and silent. You blink and she is gone. The radio hisses with static. The air feels colder. And suddenly you know you are not alone. Or picture yourself in a quiet town, a place that seems frozen in time. Old wooden buildings, dusty streets, windows that stare like hollow eyes. You glance at one of them and for a brief second you see someone watching you from inside. But that building has been locked for decades. The hairs on your neck rise. The silence presses in. And you understand why the locals never walk alone after dark. California carries stories like these in every corner. Mining towns where men fought and killed for gold, and where greed left spirits chained forever. Seaside villages where ships broke apart on the rocks, where drowned sailors still call out for help that never came. Mountain towns where men were executed, their cries carried forever on the wind. Valleys where ancient voices rise from the earth, spirits of people who lived here long before settlers arrived, spirits who guard the land with anger and sorrow. The land remembers blood. The walls remember screams. The roads remember footsteps that no longer belong to the living. Some towns whisper gently. A faint perfume in the hallway of a Victorian inn. Laughter in an empty saloon. A soft voice that seems to call your name. But some do not whisper, some scream. Doors slam shut with violence. Shadows chase you through the streets. Cold hands grip your shoulders in the dark. Some towns do not want visitors. They warn you to leave. And if you do not listen, you may never leave at all. This is the California that hides from the light. The cursed California. The California where history is alive and restless. The California of haunted towns and haunted villages, where the dead keep watch and the living walk in fear. So tonight we step away from the California of postcards and dreams. We step into the California of silence and shadows. We step into places where legends breathe and where ghosts walk. Some of these stories will chill you. Some will break your heart. And some may follow you home. This is the journey into the 15 most haunted towns and villages in California. Places where every corner hides a memory. Places where every street carries a whisper. Places where the past is not gone, and where the dead are never far away. Haunted Village Number 1, Bodie, Mono County, the cursed mining town. Bodie is not just a ghost town in name, it is a place where the past still breathes, a town where every broken wall and shattered window carries a memory, a place that feels alive even though it has been abandoned for decades. Perched high in the Sierra Nevada mountains, surrounded by barren hills and biting winds, Bodie once thrived with the fever of the gold rush. Miners, settlers, fortune seekers, and outlaws all poured into the town, filling it with saloons, gambling halls, brothels, and a darkness that grew as fast as the gold. At its height, Bodie was known for violence, greed, and lawlessness. Gunfights erupted in the streets, men died over poker games, women were beaten or left to starve, and children grew up in the shadow of blood and whiskey. It was said that a man's life in Bodie was worth less than a bullet. The residents lived hard, drank harder, and died faster. And when they died, they did not all leave. Some say they never could. As the gold ran out, Bodie's fortune turned to ash. Families fled, the buildings crumbled, and silence fell over the streets. But silence does not mean peace. Those who walk Bodie today speak of something else entirely. Something that lingers, watches, and waits. Visitors often describe the uneasy feeling of being observed, as though unseen eyes follow them from the windows of ruined houses. Some hear voices carried on the wind, laughter echoing faintly from the empty saloons, footsteps crunching on gravel when no one is behind them. The most chilling part of Bodie's legend is the curse. It is said that anyone who takes even the smallest object from the town, a nail, a rock, a piece of broken glass, becomes cursed. Bad luck, illness, accidents, and even death follow them until they return the stolen item. Rangers in Bodie receive countless letters from tourists, each letter carrying a returned trinket and a desperate plea for forgiveness. Some letters tell of broken marriages, sudden deaths in the family, financial ruin, and nightmares so vivid they left people trembling. One woman wrote that after taking a single nail, her home burned down, and she believed it was the spirit of Bodie punishing her. Another man confessed he nearly lost his life in a car crash the same week he pocketed a piece of wood. The curse of Bodie is not just legend, it is a reality documented by those who dared to disrespect the dead. Inside the buildings the air is heavy. Old furniture still stands as though waiting for its owners to return, toys lie scattered in children's rooms, and dishes sit on dusty shelves. Many who enter these spaces feel a pressure, a weight that makes breathing difficult. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, and photographs often reveal strange shapes, figures that were not seen at the time. Rangers themselves admit they hear whispers during their patrols. Doors slam shut without reason. Shadows move across walls when no light should cast them. The old cemetery on the hill adds to Bodie's ghostly reputation. Graves of miners, women, and children lie beneath the harsh sky. Some stones are broken, some names lost to time, yet the spirits tied to these graves are said to walk the town at night. Several visitors report seeing pale figures drifting near the cemetery gate, figures that vanish when approached. Some hear the faint sound of weeping carried across the dry earth, the sorrow of those who never found peace. There is also the legend of the phantom child. Many say a little girl's spirit lingers in one of the houses, her presence revealed by the faint sound of giggles and small footsteps across wooden floors. Some guests have left candies or toys in the house, only to return later and find the objects moved. Others claim to feel the tug of a small hand pulling at their clothes, as if asking for attention, though no one is there. One of the most terrifying encounters is reported near the old saloon. A man who visited described hearing piano music as he walked by at night. The windows were dark, yet the notes played clear as if someone's hands pressed the keys. When he pushed the door open, silence filled the room, the air so cold it bit into his bones. He swore he saw a man in an old miner's coat leaning against the bar, his face hidden in shadow. In a blink the figure was gone. But the chill remained, and the man left the town without looking back. Bodie is more than an abandoned town, it is a frozen memory, a wound that refuses to heal. Some places fade when people leave, but Bodie does not fade. It holds on. It traps the stories, the violence, the greed, and the sorrow. It traps the souls of those who never escaped. To walk through Bodie is to step into a world that never ended, a place where the dead and the living share the same streets. And always, the curse waits for anyone foolish enough to forget that Bodie is not just history, it is alive. Bodie is proof that not all ghost towns are empty. Some breathe, some whisper, some haunt, and some never let go. Number 2, Coloma, El Dorado County. Coloma is not just remembered as the birthplace of the California gold rush, it is remembered as a town that was born in frenzy, thrived in greed, and collapsed into sorrow. In 1848, when James Marshall discovered gold at Sutter's Mill, Coloma became the spark that ignited the rush of thousands. People poured into the valley, desperate men, broken families, gamblers, outlaws, all seeking their fortune. The riverbanks filled with tents and shacks, the air was thick with dust and sweat, and the streets echoed with shouts, laughter, and gunfire. The promise of gold was bright, but beneath the surface, Coloma carried darkness that grew with every strike of the pickaxe. Coloma was built on greed. Miners fought each other for claims, friendships dissolved into bloodshed, and fortunes were won and lost overnight. The hills witnessed violence that stained the soil, men shot dead in saloons, bodies dumped into shallow graves, widows left crying by the river. When the gold dried up, so did the joy, and what remained were broken spirits and restless souls. Many believe that is why Coloma is still haunted. The spirits of miners who died in desperation still linger, unwilling to leave the land that betrayed them. Visitors walking through Coloma today, especially near the remains of Sutter's Mill, often speak of strange sensations. Some feel the ground vibrate faintly, as if the strikes of pickaxes still echo through time. Others hear faint shouts or the clang of metal against stone, even though no one is there. Cold winds rise suddenly by the river, carrying whispers that vanish before the words can be understood. Photographs taken along the water often reveal mists in the shape of human figures, miners with hollow eyes staring back through the lens. But the most famous and chilling presence in Coloma is the woman in white. Stories of her go back generations, told by locals, tourists, and even historians who research the town. She is described as a tall, sorrowful figure dressed in a flowing white gown, her face pale, her eyes filled with grief. She is said to appear near the cemetery, drifting among the graves at dusk, her figure glowing faintly in the dark. Some say she is the ghost of a woman who lost her husband during the gold rush, a miner who died in an accident or was killed for his claim. Unable to bear her loss, she wandered the town in despair until she died, and her spirit never left. Others believe she is older, a spirit tied to the land long before the miners came, a guardian warning people of tragedy. People who see her describe overwhelming sorrow, as if her grief seeps into their bones. Some have reported hearing her soft cries on the wind, a woman's voice weeping quietly when no one is around. A few claim she reaches out to travelers, her pale hand raised as if begging them to help her find peace. But when anyone gets close, she vanishes, leaving only silence and cold air behind. The Coloma Cemetery itself is another place of dread. It is filled with the graves of miners, children, and families who died during the rush, many marked by broken stones, some unmarked completely. Locals warn visitors not to linger there after dark, because that is when the spirits walk. Strange lights hover above the graves, footsteps crunch in the dirt, and shadows move along the trees. One traveler once described hearing a full conversation between two men in hushed tones, though when he turned, the cemetery was empty. Another claimed to see a group of figures dressed in old mining clothes walking slowly between the headstones, their faces blank, their bodies transparent. He left before they noticed him. The old buildings of Coloma also carry their hauntings. In the ruins of saloons, people hear glasses clinking and faint bursts of laughter, like echoes from another time. In the schoolhouse, some swear they hear children's voices reciting lessons, though the desks have long been empty. In one of the cabins, a visitor claimed to feel someone grab his shoulder hard, but when he spun around he found nothing, only deep scratches across the wood where his back had been. Locals say that Coloma is a place where the gold rush never ended, where the greed, violence, and sorrow are trapped in the air, replaying over and over. Some believe the spirits are restless because they never achieved what they wanted, the miners still searching for their fortune, the families still waiting for their loved ones to return. Others believe the land itself holds them, cursed by the blood spilled and the desperation that once consumed the town. Even in the daylight, Coloma feels heavy. The air is quiet, yet alive with something unseen. Tourists describe leaving with headaches, exhaustion, or an unshakable sadness that follows them for days. Some refuse to return, convinced the town tried to attach itself to them. The woman in white, the miners, the whispers, they all remain waiting in the ruins of the birthplace of the gold rush. Coloma stands as a reminder that fortune always comes with a price, that greed leaves scars, and that not all who dig for gold find peace. In Coloma, the search never ends and the dead do not rest. Number 3. Calico, San Bernardino County. Calico is a place where the desert itself seems to breathe with the memory of the dead. Once a booming silver mining town, born in 1881, Calico drew thousands of fortune seekers into the harsh landscape. The mountains glimmered with promise, silver veins hidden beneath the rock, and for a time Calico thrived. Saloons lined the dusty streets, miners worked day and night, and money flowed as freely as the whiskey. But like so many mining towns, it was not built to last. By the turn of the century, the silver dried up, and the people vanished, leaving only the skeleton of a town. What remains today is more than just wood and stone, more than boarded windows and silent mines. What remains is presence. Visitors who walk through the restored streets of Calico often describe a feeling of being watched, as if the spirits of the miners never left, as if they are still there, leaning against broken beams, peering through dusty windows, whispering from the dark. The desert sun may scorch the ground by day, but by night, the cold air carries voices that do not belong to the living. The mines are the heart of the hauntings. Dozens of shafts cut deep into the earth, tunnels where men once sweated, bled, and sometimes died. Cave-ins were common, accidents claimed countless lives, and some say not every body was recovered. Even today, when tourists walk near the mines, they hear the clink of picks against stone, echoing through tunnels that should be silent. Some swear they hear men coughing, their voices hoarse with dust. Others claim to hear cries for help, faint and distant, as if trapped miners are still calling out from beneath the rock. One chilling story tells of a visitor who leaned into a shaft to listen and heard a low, rasping breath right next to his ear. He turned, but there was no one there, only the black mouth of the mine staring back. Calico streets are no less haunted. Figures have been seen drifting between the old buildings, miners in worn clothing, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. Some vanish when approached, while others linger long enough for the air to turn icy cold. In the saloon, people hear phantom laughter, chairs scraping, glasses clinking together in toasts that never end. The jail, small and dark, is said to echo with moans as if prisoners still rattle their chains. The schoolhouse has its own whispers, the sound of children reciting lessons that no teacher speaks. But perhaps the most famous spirit of Calico is not a miner at all, but a woman. Locals call her Esmeralda, a figure in a long dress who is seen near the old bordello and along the dusty main road. She is said to have been a woman who came west searching for a better life, only to find despair. Some say she was murdered, others say she died in a fire that swept through part of the town, her screams echoing into the hills. Visitors claim she still walks, her figure faint but unmistakable, her head lowered, her hands clutching something close to her chest. When she appears, the air drops suddenly, and an unnatural silence falls across the street. There are other reports, stranger still. Lantern lights floating along ridges where no one walks. Footsteps that follow travelers from one building to another. Shadows moving in windows of houses that have no floors inside. Dogs brought into Calico are said to growl and refuse to enter certain areas, their fur standing on end. Photographs often show streaks of light or mist, shapes that look like faces, miners staring back at those who dare to trespass. Some who spend the night in Calico tell of dreams that feel too real, dreams of digging in the mines, of being crushed by falling rock, of drinking in the saloon while unfamiliar voices surround them. They wake with dust in their throats, with the smell of smoke in the air, even though no fires burn. The desert itself seems to hold the energy of the town. At dusk, when the red sun sinks behind the mountains, shadows stretch across the ruins, and the land grows quiet, too quiet. It is then that people claim to hear the town awaken. The clang of hammers, the murmur of voices, the faint sound of horses' hooves along the empty street. The past and present blur, and for a moment, Calico lives again, but not with the living. Historians call Calico a ghost town because its people left. But those who have walked its haunted roads know better. Calico never emptied, it simply shifted. The living moved away and the dead remained. They remain in the shafts, in the saloon, in the streets, forever bound to the desert that promised them fortune but delivered only sorrow. Calico is more than a museum of the gold rush era. It is a graveyard disguised as a town, a place where silver built dreams and shattered lives, where voices echo in tunnels of stone, and where the line between history and haunting has long since vanished. Number 4, Placerville, El Dorado County. Placerville, once called Hangtown, carries one of the darkest reputations in California's history, a name etched into its streets with fear, blood, and whispered curses. During the mid-1800s, when the gold rush swept through the Sierra Nevada foothills, this town grew overnight from a rough mining camp into a booming settlement. But with wealth and opportunity came lawlessness, and Placerville became infamous for its swift, brutal justice. Unlike other towns where formal trials took place, Placerville was known for hanging men accused of theft, cheating, or murder with little deliberation. A man accused of stealing gold dust, another caught cheating at cards, even drifters who couldn't prove their innocence. Many of them found themselves dragged to the gallows or, more often, strung up from an oak tree in the town square. It was a time when anger ruled and suspicion was enough to end a life. The hanging tree stood as a grim warning, its twisted branches scarred by ropes and weight. But while Placerville thrived economically, the spirits of those who died violently never left. For over a century, stories have poured in about restless ghosts that stalk its streets, inns, saloons, and even private homes. Locals claim that the souls of the lynched still linger, condemned to walk the town forever in torment. Visitors who stroll through the historic district at night often report a strange heaviness in the air, as if dozens of unseen eyes are watching. Some describe a sudden chill sweeping over them when they pass the site of the original hanging tree. A few have sworn that on moonlit nights, a ghostly noose can be seen swaying gently above the square, though no tree stands there anymore. Others claim they have heard the faint creaking of rope and the gasping choke of unseen voices, trapped in their final moments. Inside Placerville's historic buildings, the hauntings grow stronger. At the Carey House Hotel, one of the most famous stops in town, guests have reported phantom footsteps echoing in empty hallways, shadows passing across mirrors, and bedsheets tugging in the middle of the night. Some guests wake to find the imprint of a body lying beside them, though no one is there. It is said that several of the men who died under Hangtown's noose still wander this hotel, seeking peace they will never find. In the old taverns, particularly those that date back to the Gold Rush era, glasses clink on their own, chairs scrape across wooden floors without a hand touching them, and whispers float just out of earshot. More chillingly, bartenders claim that some evenings when the lights are low, they glimpse phantom men sitting at the bar, faces pale, rope burns dark around their necks only for the figures to vanish when approached. Not all the spirits are tied to the hangings. Placerville's mines were equally brutal, claiming countless lives in collapses and explosions. Some miners perished deep underground, their bodies never recovered, and locals insist their ghosts rise up at night. On still evenings, especially when fog curls down from the mountains, phantom pickaxes are heard striking stone, and the faint echo of miners' songs drift across the town. Perhaps the most terrifying stories come from those who wander alone after dark. Several visitors report being followed by heavy footsteps that stop the moment they turn around. Others say they see shadowy figures pacing rooftops or standing motionless in alleyways, their faces obscured but their presence undeniable. One chilling tale speaks of a man who walked home late one evening only to notice a shadow swaying from an invisible rope above him, keeping pace with every step until he fled. Placerville is not just haunted by individual spirits, it is haunted by its very past. The town seems soaked in its history, every brick and every floorboard holding echoes of the violence that once defined it. Locals often say that Hangtown's curse is not that the dead remain, but that the land itself refuses to let go of the blood spilled upon it. Even today, tourists are drawn to Placerville for its gold rush charm. They wander its shops, dine in its restaurants, and stay in its hotels. But after dark, when the crowds thin and silence falls, Placerville becomes something else entirely, a town caught between past and present, a place where history comes alive in ways that leave cold chills crawling across your skin. Those who dare to stay overnight in the town often report the same thing. As the clock passes midnight, the line between the living and the dead grows thin. In the silence, the echoes of Placerville's grim history return, the muffled cries of the condemned, the creak of rope, the roar of drunken crowds demanding blood. Placerville, once Hangtown, is more than a historical relic. It is a reminder that violence leaves scars not just on the body, but on the land and the soul. And here, in this quiet town in El Dorado County, the ghosts of justice served too swiftly still walk, forever restless, forever watching. Number 5. Murphy's, Calaveras County. Murphy's, nestled in Calaveras County, looks like a charming small town today, with its preserved 19th-century buildings, cozy inns, and inviting shops that line its historic Main Street. But beneath this picturesque surface lies a much darker and far older story, one woven out of desperation, greed, violence, and the restless souls that still wander here. Known during the Gold Rush era as one of the richest mining towns in California, Murphy's attracted men from across the globe who hoped to strike it rich. But with gold came danger, and with danger came death. In the 1850s, Murphy's was alive with noise, miners shouting, stagecoaches rattling over the rough dirt streets, saloons filled with drunken songs and violent brawls. It was a town that never slept, and like many mining settlements, it quickly gained a reputation for lawlessness. Men gambled fortunes away in a single night, fights broke out over gold dust, and more than one miner was stabbed or shot in drunken rage. The dead were often buried hastily with little ceremony, their spirits left unsettled. Today those same spirits seem to linger. Visitors to Murphy's often speak of ghostly encounters that hint at its bloody past. One of the most common stories is that of phantom stagecoaches. On quiet nights, when the town sleeps and the streets are empty, some claim to hear the rattle of wheels and the pounding of horses' hooves. Witnesses describe it as if an invisible coach barrels through the town, the sound growing louder before fading into silence. Others insist they have actually seen it, a black, spectral carriage racing down Main Street, its driver faceless, its passengers nothing more than shifting shadows. The saloons of Murphy's are just as haunted. In several historic establishments, bartenders and patrons alike report glasses sliding across counters, chairs tipping over and ghostly laughter rising from empty corners. Some swear that after midnight, spectral miners appear, stumbling drunkenly through the taverns, reenacting brawls of long ago. One chilling tale comes from a visitor who felt a heavy hand slap him on the back while he sat alone at the bar. When he turned, no one was there except for the faint smell of whiskey lingering in the air. The Murphy's Hotel, built in 1856, is perhaps the most famous hotspot for paranormal activity. Guests have reported footsteps pacing in hallways when no one is around, doors opening and slamming on their own, and ghostly figures appearing at the foot of beds. One spirit said to roam the hotel is that of a miner who lost his life in a drunken fight. His presence is often accompanied by sudden cold spots and the sound of wheezing breath, as if his final moments of agony are forever replayed in the building's walls. Even more unsettling are the reports of a woman in white seen gliding silently through the hotel's corridors. Some believe she was the wife of a miner who died tragically, others say she was a guest who never checked out. Her ghost has been described as both mournful and angry, her eyes hollow, her presence chilling. Guests who encounter her often feel an overwhelming sadness that lingers long after she disappears. The cemetery on the edge of town tells its own story. Rows of weathered headstones mark the resting places of miners, settlers, and their families. Many died young, some violently, and others far from home. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures kneeling at graves, hearing the cries of unseen children, and feeling watched by invisible eyes. On certain nights, strange lights flicker among the stones, leading some to believe that the souls of Murphy's dead still wander, searching for something they never found in life. But perhaps the most unnerving experiences are those felt by locals who live in historic homes. Many houses in Murphy's date back to the Gold Rush era, their walls steeped in history. Residents tell of footsteps echoing up staircases, doors rattling in the middle of the night, and shadowy figures drifting from room to room. Some have even heard the sound of shovels scraping dirt, as if ghostly miners are still digging for treasure long lost. Murphy's is not just haunted by individual spirits, it is haunted by its entire past. The town is like a living museum, but one where history refuses to remain silent. Every stone street and weathered beam seems to hold an imprint of the lives, struggles, and deaths that once played out here. It is as though the gold rush never truly ended, its echoes still rattling through the town like the wheels of a phantom coach. To walk through Murphy's at night is to feel the weight of time pressing down on you, to hear whispers that have no source, to sense the restless souls of miners, gamblers, and settlers watching from the shadows. It is beautiful, yes, but it is also a place where joy and tragedy are forever entwined, where the line between the living and the dead is thinner than most care to admit. Murphy's, the gem of Calaveras County, may shine in daylight, but when darkness falls, it becomes something else entirely, a town alive with ghosts, haunted by the echoes of its gold rush past, and forever cursed by the restless spirits of men who drank too much, gambled too recklessly, and died too soon. Number 6. Julian, San Diego County. Julian in San Diego County is a town that seems frozen in time, a place where the gold rush spirit lingers not only in the preserved wooden storefronts and historic saloons but also in the chilling stories whispered after dark. Founded in the 1870s during a short but explosive gold boom, Julian quickly grew from a rugged camp into a bustling settlement filled with miners, merchants, gamblers, and families. Though the gold eventually ran dry, the echoes of that frantic period never truly left. Today, visitors come for apple pies and mountain charm, but those who stay overnight often discover something far more unsettling, a reminder that the past in Julian is not entirely at rest. The hotels of Julian are the heart of its hauntings. The Julian Hotel, built in 1897, is perhaps the most infamous. Guests have spoken of disembodied voices drifting through hallways, heavy footsteps pacing outside locked doors, and the sound of a rocking chair moving when no one is sitting in it. Some claim to have seen a woman in period dress gliding silently down the stairs, her eyes fixed on something unseen, her form fading before reaching the lobby. She is said to be the wife of a hotel owner, mourning the loss of her husband, forever wandering in sorrow. Inside the rooms, the activity is more personal. Travelers have reported waking to feel the weight of someone sitting at the foot of their bed, only to find no one there. Others describe the faint smell of tobacco or whiskey filling the air, even though smoking has long been prohibited. A few have awoken in the middle of the night to see the outline of a man in old miner's clothing, leaning against the wall as though waiting for someone. He vanishes when the light is turned on, leaving behind an icy chill. Julian's saloons are no less haunted. In the dark corners of century-old bars, laughter is sometimes heard long after the last customer has gone home. Glasses slide across counters, bottles rattle on shelves, and the sound of a piano plays faintly even when the instrument is untouched. Locals say these are the ghosts of prospectors and gamblers who once filled the saloons, men who drank too hard, fought too fiercely, and often met their end in violence. Their spirits seem unwilling to leave, forever replaying the rowdy nights that defined their short lives. One bartender tells of a night when, alone while closing, he heard boots stomping on the wooden floor behind him. He turned to find the barroom empty, yet the sound continued, circling the room until it suddenly stopped. Others have reported hearing chairs scrape across the floor, as if invisible patrons are pulling up seats to join a game of cards that never ends. The streets of Julian themselves seem alive with energy. After dark, shadows have been seen moving against the glow of lanterns and streetlights. Some visitors describe hearing the distant jingle of harness bells, the echo of wagon wheels rolling over the dirt, and the crack of a whip in the night air. These phantom sounds come from no living source, but they mirror the bustling noise of a town that once thrived on mining wealth and restless souls. Julian's cemetery adds another layer to its haunted reputation. Resting on a hillside, the old graveyard holds the remains of miners, townsfolk, and children who succumbed to illness in the harsh conditions of the 19th century. Visitors report flickering lights weaving between the headstones, ghostly figures standing at graves, and the chilling sound of a child's laughter echoing through the night. Many leave with the sense that they were not alone, that unseen eyes followed them as they walked among the dead. Even modern residents of Julian share their own ghostly tales. Some hear knocks on their doors with no one outside. Others describe sudden drops in temperature and objects moving on their own. A few even claim to have seen miners walking the back roads, lanterns in hand, searching endlessly for gold they never found. Julian may present itself as a quiet mountain retreat by day, famous for apple orchards and small-town hospitality, but by night it transforms into something else entirely. It is a place where the past overlaps with the present, where ghostly prospectors linger in saloons, where widows mourn in hotel halls, and where the restless dead wander beneath the stars. Julian is not just haunted. It is alive with memory, heavy with loss, and charged with the lingering energy of men and women who came seeking fortune but left only tragedy behind. To visit is to step into history, but to stay the night is to risk brushing against the cold hand of the past, a reminder that in Julian the gold rush is far from over. Number 7. Nevada City, Nevada County. Nevada City in Nevada County is one of the most atmospheric towns in California, a place where time seems to blur and the echoes of the gold rush linger not just in its preserved streets but also in the chilling presence of spirits that refuse to fade. Founded during the height of the gold rush, Nevada City quickly grew into a bustling hub of miners, merchants, gamblers, and families, a town of both prosperity and bloodshed. Wealth was discovered and squandered here, fortunes rose and collapsed, and death came quickly in the mines, in the saloons, and sometimes in the streets. It is no wonder that Nevada City is said to be haunted, not by one or two restless souls, but by dozens who seem to have never moved on. The historic inns are among the most unsettling places in Nevada City. The National Exchange Hotel, built in 1856, has stood for more than a century and a half, surviving fires and generations of guests. Those who stay there speak of footsteps pacing above their rooms when no one is lodged on the floor above. Doors open and close on their own. Whispered conversations can be heard drifting through the hallways, muffled as if behind thin walls, but when investigated, the rooms are empty. Some guests have even reported waking in the middle of the night to see a woman standing silently at the foot of their bed, dressed in 19th century attire, her face obscured by shadow. By the time they blink, she is gone, but the air remains icy cold. The theaters of Nevada City are equally haunted. The Nevada Theater, California's oldest existing theater building, is said to host more than just living actors. Staff and performers speak of a man in old-fashioned clothes who sometimes appears backstage, watching rehearsals with a grim expression before fading into the dark. Others have reported hearing applause in an empty theater, or the sudden sound of a piano playing when the building is locked. A woman's laughter, high-pitched and mocking, has been recorded by paranormal investigators when no one else was present. It is said that the theater's ghosts may be former patrons who died during its long history, returning again and again to enjoy the performances they once loved. The saloons, of course, have their share of spirits too. In some bars, bartenders lock up for the night only to hear glasses clinking, chairs scraping across the wooden floor, and the faint sound of men's voices arguing. A gambler's ghost is said to still sit at one particular table, his cards laid out in front of him, replaying the final hand that cost him not only his money but also his life. Witnesses have described seeing his figure reflected in mirrors, only to vanish when they turn around. The streets of Nevada City themselves are not quiet either. After dusk, some visitors claim to hear the echo of wagon wheels on cobblestone, the jingle of horse harnesses, and the shuffle of boots moving just behind them. But when they stop and turn, no one is there. Others say they have seen full-bodied apparitions wandering near lampposts, dressed in the dusty clothes of miners, their faces blank, their forms disappearing into the night mist. The town cemetery adds a deeper layer of unease. Many of those buried there died young, victims of mining accidents, disease, and violence. The grounds are said to glow faintly at night, with orbs of light weaving through the headstones. Visitors speak of shadows moving between the graves, the sound of children crying, and the eerie sensation of being watched. One of the most chilling stories tells of a miner's grave that is always cold to the touch, even in the height of summer, as though the earth itself remembers his suffering. Even the locals of Nevada City share personal stories that keep the legends alive. Some say they hear phantom knocks on their doors in the middle of the night, only to find no one outside. Others describe objects moving on their own, sudden drafts of icy wind, or the scent of tobacco smoke lingering in their homes when no one has been smoking. A few even claim to have seen ghostly miners wandering into shops, their faces pale, their eyes empty, fading away as soon as they step inside. Nevada City is more than a historic town. It is a place where the veil between past and present feels thin, where the energy of the gold rush never fully died, and where spirits continue to wander through inns, theaters, and streets, searching for something they never found in life. To walk through Nevada City after dark is to walk among both the living and the dead, and for those who dare to stay the night, the experience can be unforgettable. Number 8. Shasta County. Shasta in Shasta County was once called the Queen City of California's northern mines, a thriving boomtown filled with miners, merchants, and settlers chasing dreams of gold. In the mid-1800s, its streets were alive with saloons, hotels, shops, and even a busy courthouse and jail. But as the gold dried up and fortunes faded, Shasta slowly declined, its bustling streets growing silent until it became little more than a ghost town. Today, preserved as a historic state park, Shasta still stands with the crumbling remains of brick buildings and echoes of a past that refuses to stay buried. Locals and visitors alike say the ghosts of prisoners, miners, and townsfolk still linger, bound to the place they once called home. The old courthouse and jail are said to be the most haunted locations in Shasta. Prisoners who once sat behind iron bars, waiting for execution or endless years of confinement, are rumored to have never left. Visitors walking through the cells report hearing clanging metal doors slam shut, even when no one else is inside. The sound of heavy boots pacing across the stone floors echoes in the silence, as if guards are still making their rounds. Some have even felt cold hands brush against their shoulders or heard whispers of men begging to be freed. At night, the jail windows are sometimes lit by a strange glow, though the building stands empty and locked. The gallows behind the courthouse add another chilling layer to Shasta's haunted history. Men were hanged there for crimes ranging from robbery to murder, and their restless spirits are said to still wander. People walking near the site often feel sudden drops in temperature, the sensation of choking around their necks, or the overwhelming dread of being watched. Paranormal investigators claim to have recorded faint screams and the sound of a rope creaking in the wind, though nothing was physically present. The streets of Shasta themselves are far from quiet. On moonlit nights, travelers claim to see ghostly figures drifting in and out of the old brick ruins. Some appear as miners carrying picks and lanterns, their faces worn with exhaustion and desperation, only to vanish into thin air. Others describe the shadowy figure of a woman in 19th-century dress, who seems to wander endlessly past the old hotel ruins, as if searching for someone she lost long ago. The clip-clop of phantom horses and the creak of wagon wheels are often heard along the main road, though nothing is ever visible. Shasta Cemetery adds to its reputation as one of the most haunted historic towns in Northern California. The graves of pioneers, children, and criminals lie scattered across the hillside, many marked with weathered stones or none at all. Visitors tell of strange lights weaving among the graves, footsteps following them through the dark, and the unmistakable sound of weeping echoing in the night air. Some even claim to see shadowy forms kneeling at gravesides, fading away as they draw near. But it is not just tourists who feel the eerie presence of Shasta spirits. Park rangers and local residents tell of their own encounters. Some report hearing voices inside locked buildings, conversations in hushed tones as though the townsfolk still gather after dark. Others describe objects moving on their own, lights flickering, or the strong scent of tobacco smoke hanging in the air when no one is nearby. There are even tales of a phantom prisoner, still clad in tattered clothes, who has been seen wandering near the jail, his eyes hollow, his steps heavy with despair. To walk through Shasta is to step into another time, a place where life and death exist side by side. The town may be empty of residents, but it is far from silent. The miners who sought fortune, the prisoners who faced justice, and the townsfolk who built their lives in the dust all seem to remain, their stories carved into the ruins and whispered through the winds. Shasta is not just a historic site, it is a place where the past is alive, where every shadow might hide a ghost, and where the silence is always waiting to be broken by the echoes of those who never left. Number 9, Downieville, Sierra County. Downieville in Sierra County is a picturesque little town tucked into the Sierra Nevada, surrounded by forested mountains and rivers. Today it looks calm, even charming, but its history hides shadows that still cling tightly to its streets. In the mid-1800s, Downieville was alive with the chaos of the gold rush, its saloons and dance halls filled with miners celebrating their strikes or drowning their failures. But the rush also brought lawlessness, desperation, and brutal justice. Many who were accused of crimes, guilty or not, faced the rope. It is said that some of those souls, wrongfully executed in haste, never left, their restless spirits wandering the town to this very day. The most infamous story tied to Downieville is that of Juanita, a Mexican woman accused of stabbing a miner after a drunken fight turned violent. In 1851, without trial or mercy, the angry mob of townsfolk dragged her into the street and hanged her from a bridge that crossed the river. She was the first and only woman ever lynched in California, and her ghost is said to haunt Downieville. People claim to see her figure drifting silently along the riverbank, her white dress torn and her face pale, her eyes filled with sorrow and anger. Others hear the faint sound of sobbing by the water, the cries of a woman who was never given justice. But Juanita is not alone. Downieville's old jails and gallows became sites of swift punishment during its heyday, and countless others met their end here. Many were innocent or executed in the heat of anger rather than reason. Their ghosts are said to linger in the heart of town. Some visitors report seeing shadowy men in tattered miners' clothes pacing near the courthouse, their hands bound in rope. Others hear the creak of a rope swaying in the wind when no rope is there, or feel a sudden pressure around their necks, as though the last moments of those executed are being replayed again and again. Local business owners in Downieville have also shared strange experiences. Saloons where miners once drank themselves into a frenzy are said to echo with ghostly laughter and the clinking of glasses, even when the rooms are empty. A few inns report footsteps climbing the stairs at night, doors opening on their own, and phantom figures appearing briefly in mirrors before vanishing. Guests often wake to cold chills or the sense of someone standing at the foot of their bed. Some even say they have seen Juanita herself inside these rooms, watching silently, her face a mask of both sorrow and rage. The town cemetery carries its own weight of legends. On misty nights, lantern-like lights are seen weaving between the headstones, drifting slowly as though carried by unseen hands. Visitors walking through have reported voices whispering in Spanish and English, some begging for help, others warning them to leave. Dogs brought into the cemetery often refuse to move forward, growling or whining at something their owners cannot see. Even the river that runs through Downieville seems alive with the echoes of the past. Fishermen and campers by the water claim to see a woman standing on the bridge at night, only for her to fade away when approached. Some say the sound of splashing can be heard in the darkness, followed by frantic cries, as though someone is reliving their drowning again and again. Downieville is a place where history bleeds into the present, where the sins of the past still cry out for recognition. It is not just a gold rush town frozen in time, it is a reminder of how quickly fear and anger once turned into violence, leaving scars that linger for centuries. To walk its streets at night is to walk beside the condemned, to hear the sorrow of those who died without justice, and to feel the chill of spirits who cannot forgive the wrong done to them. Number 10. Weaverville, Trinity County. Weaverville, nestled deep within Trinity County, looks like a charming piece of California's gold rush history frozen in time. Wooden storefronts line its main street, the air carries the faint scent of pine, and the Trinity Alps rise in the distance, giving it the look of a quiet mountain retreat. Yet beneath this peaceful facade lies a darker story, one of pioneers who never let go of the past and Chinese immigrants whose spirits are said to remain bound to the place where they toiled, suffered, and sometimes died far from home. Founded during the frenzy of the gold rush in the 1850s, Weaverville became a bustling hub where miners, merchants and settlers gathered, their hopes pinned on striking it rich. But as with many gold rush towns, prosperity came with violence, greed, and bitter divisions. Chinese immigrants who played a major role in building the town's infrastructure and working the mines, were often marginalized, exploited, and treated with cruelty. Stories say many of them died under harsh conditions, sometimes in accidents, sometimes from attacks. Locals believe their spirits never left, haunting the very streets and alleys where they once walked in silence. One of the most well-known haunted locations in Weaverville is the Weaverville Joss House, a Taoist temple built in the 1870s. To this day it stands as a historic site, a beautiful red structure dedicated to Chinese heritage. But those who enter after dark report hearing the sound of soft chanting, the rustle of silk robes, and the distinct smell of incense even when no offerings are burning. Some have seen figures dressed in traditional Chinese garments drifting through the temple, their faces blurred, their movements eerily calm. Guides and caretakers have admitted they feel watched constantly when inside the Joss House, as though the spirits of those who prayed there still linger, waiting for someone to acknowledge their presence. Beyond the temple, the streets of Weaverville themselves seem alive with echoes of the past. On quiet nights, shadowy figures are said to wander the alleys between old saloons and shops. Residents claim to hear the clinking of glasses and the laughter of miners from long ago, sounds that fade the moment you stop to listen closely. Old inns in the village have their share of ghost stories too. Guests have reported waking in the middle of the night to see a man in pioneer clothing sitting at the edge of the bed, only for him to vanish as they blink. Others describe feeling a sudden drop in temperature and the sensation of someone breathing over their shoulder, though no one else is in the room. The cemetery in Weaverville is another hotspot of paranormal activity. Rows of weathered gravestones mark the resting places of pioneers and immigrants alike, but not all of them rest peacefully. Visitors walking there at dusk have seen glowing lanterns bobbing among the graves, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, as though someone is searching for something long lost. Voices in both English and Chinese are heard whispering in the night, their words incomprehensible yet filled with longing. A few visitors have even claimed that as they leave, they feel a tug at their clothing, as if unseen hands are trying to hold them back, not wanting them to leave the dead alone. One chilling story often told in Weaverville is that of a Chinese laborer who died in a mining accident. Locals say that his spirit, unable to return to his homeland for a proper burial, wanders the town endlessly. Some nights, drivers on the outskirts of Weaverville claim to see a man walking slowly down the road in worn clothing, his face pale and eyes hollow. When headlights hit him, he disappears instantly, leaving behind only the feeling of grief and sorrow. But the hauntings are not limited to immigrants alone. The pioneer spirits of Weaverville are said to be just as active. Old saloons tell of piano music playing faintly in the distance, despite no instruments being present. Bartenders have claimed that bottles slide across shelves on their own, as though unseen hands are still pouring drinks for weary miners. One historic hotel in town is rumored to house the ghost of a woman in a long dress who wanders the hallways, pausing at doors as if searching for someone she lost long ago. Guests have awakened to see her standing silently at the foot of their beds, her eyes filled with sadness before she fades into the air. Weaverville is more than a historic village, it is a living museum of spirits. It is a place where cultures collided, where dreams were made and destroyed, where injustice left wounds so deep that even time has not healed them. To walk its streets is to step into two worlds at once, the bustling gold rush town of the past and the spectral echoes that still refuse to fade. The pioneers and immigrants who built Weaverville may be long gone in flesh, but in spirit they remain, lingering in the shadows, waiting for the living to remember their struggles, their losses, and their stories. Number 11. Sonora, Tuolumne County. Sonora, the crown jewel of Tuolumne County, is often called the Queen of the Southern Mines, and its streets still breathe with the energy of the gold rush days. Founded in 1848 by Mexican miners from Sonora, Mexico, this town quickly became one of the richest and most active mining centers in California. Its prosperity, however, was built on hardship, betrayal, and countless lives lost in the pursuit of gold. And with every shovel of dirt that was turned, every saloon brawl that ended in blood, and every child lost to illness in the rugged mining camps, the town collected restless spirits that still wander its historic streets. The town of Sonora looks picturesque during the day, with its old brick buildings, winding streets, and surrounding oak-dotted hills. But when night falls, the atmosphere changes. Locals say that Sonora becomes alive with whispers from another time, with shadows that move where no person walks, and with the heavy presence of those who cannot leave. Many of the town's hauntings are tied directly to the miners who lived and died here, men who worked the earth until exhaustion or tragedy took them. Their spirits are said to linger near the old mining shafts and along the dark trails that once led them to fortune or to their doom. One of the most common ghostly encounters in Sonora is the sound of picks and shovels echoing through the hills at night. Travelers walking outside of town have reported hearing the rhythmic clang of metal striking stone, followed by muffled voices speaking in languages long forgotten. When they follow the sounds, they find nothing but silence, empty shafts, and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Paranormal investigators claim that some of these voices are in Spanish, linking them to the original Sonoran miners who gave the town its name. But the most chilling legends are not of the miners, but of the children of Sonora. Life in a gold rush town was unforgiving, and diseases often swept through the camps, taking the youngest first. In Sonora Cemetery, locals say the spirits of these children linger. Visitors have heard the faint sound of laughter drifting between the gravestones, followed by the heartbreaking sound of children crying. Some say they have seen small figures darting between the headstones, only to vanish when approached. A few have even reported that their hands were tugged gently by invisible fingers, as though a child was asking them to stay and play. There is also a tale of the crying child of Washington Street, one of Sonora's oldest and busiest roads. At night, passers-by have heard the sobbing of a young boy near one of the historic buildings, his voice rising and falling in the stillness. When people stop to look, the sobbing stops, replaced by the eerie silence of empty streets. Some believe this spirit belongs to a miner's son who died while waiting for his father to return from the shafts, a child lost to time but bound forever to the town. The old hotels and saloons of Sonora are not free from ghostly activity either. Patrons and staff in certain establishments have reported flickering lights, doors that open and close on their own, and the heavy footsteps of boots pacing above them when no one else is there. One historic saloon is said to be haunted by a miner who was stabbed during a card game gone wrong. His apparition has been seen sitting at the bar, staring into an empty glass, before fading into thin air. Even the Sonora Opera Hall, built in the mid-19th century, has its share of haunting tales. Visitors describe seeing a shadowy figure watching performances from the balcony, even when the hall is closed. Actors and workers have reported hearing applause from an empty theater, as though the spirits of long-gone patrons still gather to enjoy the shows. Sonora's haunted reputation is not just fueled by stories, but by the lingering atmosphere of the town itself. Walking through its historic district at night, the air feels heavy, the silence too deep, and the shadows too dark. Some believe the land itself is cursed, forever marked by the blood, sweat, and tears spilled during the gold rush. Others say the spirits of Sonora remain simply because they loved the town too much to leave, clinging to the streets, the mines, and the memories of their short, hard lives. To visit Sonora is to step into two worlds at once, the bustling town of prospectors, saloons, and miners of the past, and the haunted echoes that linger, whispering to those who dare to listen. The miners still dig, the children still cry, and the restless dead of Sonora ensure that its gold rush history is never truly gone. Number 12. Grass Valley, Nevada County. Grass Valley, nestled deep in Nevada County, looks today like a charming and historic gold rush town with its elegant Victorian homes, old brick storefronts, and streets that seem to echo with the sound of horse-drawn wagons from another age. But beneath its picturesque beauty lies a much darker side. Grass Valley is one of California's most haunted towns, a place where restless miners, tragic women, and echoes of violent history still linger in the shadows. Those who walk its streets at night say Grass Valley never truly sleeps. Instead, it whispers, it watches, and it breathes with the weight of the past. Founded during the gold rush in the mid-1800s, Grass Valley became one of the richest mining towns in the region. The Empire Mine, one of the oldest and deepest gold mines in California, drew men from across the world. They came with dreams of riches, but what many found instead was suffering, danger, and death. The mines claimed countless lives through cave-ins, explosions, accidents, and disease. The town above ground was no safer, filled with saloons, gambling dens, and brothels where greed, jealousy, and violence often ended in bloodshed. It is said that every coin pulled from the earth carried a curse, and every street in Grass Valley is haunted by someone who never made it out alive. One of the most infamous haunts is the Empire Mine itself. Visitors and workers have long reported ghostly activity deep within its tunnels. They speak of disembodied voices calling out in the dark, footsteps echoing on stone paths long after the mine was abandoned, and strange cold winds rushing past even when the air below should be still. Some claim to see miners still wearing their lamps and helmets, spectral figures who vanish when approached. These miners, they say, are still searching for gold, eternally trapped in the tunnels where their lives ended. Above ground, the haunting continues. The North Star House, a grand historic mansion built in the early 20th century, has become a hotspot for paranormal sightings. Guests and caretakers have reported flickering lights, footsteps in empty hallways, and the apparition of a woman in Victorian dress gliding through the rooms. Some believe she was once a resident of the house. Others say she was one of the many women tied to the fortunes and tragedies of Grass Valley's mining boom. But it is not only in the grand homes that spirits linger. Grass Valley's downtown streets are filled with stories of spectral women. Some are said to be former saloon girls or brothel workers, women whose lives ended tragically in violence or despair. They appear late at night, drifting along the sidewalks in long gowns, their faces pale and sorrowful. Passers-by describe the sudden scent of perfume in the air, even when no one is around, followed by a fleeting glimpse of a woman disappearing into the shadows. Others say these women call out to men walking alone, their soft voices filled with longing, before vanishing into thin air. One chilling story comes from Main Street, where locals have reported the sound of piano music coming from one of the old saloons that no longer exists. The music drifts through the air, faint and ghostly, as if a party from another time is still taking place. Some say if you follow the music you may hear laughter and clinking glasses, but the sounds always fade, leaving only silence and the feeling that someone is standing just behind you. The cemeteries of Grass Valley are equally unsettling. The Grass Valley Pioneer Cemetery is said to be filled with restless souls, miners who died without family, women who were buried without names, and children taken too soon. Visitors have described hearing cries in the night, seeing glowing orbs floating among the gravestones, and even feeling invisible hands brush against them as they walked. Paranormal investigators claim that the energy in the cemetery is overwhelming, with EVP recordings capturing voices whispering names, numbers, and pleas for help. There is also a legend of the Lady in Black, a spectral woman who appears near one of Grass Valley's old hotels. She is seen standing silently on the balcony, her dress billowing as though in a wind that no one else can feel. Witnesses say she stares out at the street below, waiting for someone who never returned. Some believe she was the wife of a miner who went to work and never came back, killed in a cave-in and buried forever in the depths of the earth. Her sorrow keeps her tied to Grass Valley, watching endlessly for a husband who will never walk through the door again. And yet, the most chilling part of Grass Valley's hauntings is the atmosphere of the town itself. Visitors describe walking through its Victorian streets at night and feeling as though they are not alone. The air grows heavier, the silence too deep, and the shadows seem to move just out of sight. Lamps flicker, footsteps echo on cobblestones, and whispers rise in the wind. Some even claim that if you stop and listen closely, you can hear the distant ring of picks against stone, the cries of miners trapped below, and the faint laughter of women whose stories were never written down. Grass Valley is a place where history is not confined to books and museums. It is alive in the very stones, in the tunnels beneath the ground, and in the spirits that refuse to leave. The restless miners still dig, the spectral women still wander, and the streets echo with voices from a time when life was brutal, short, and often tragic. To walk through Grass Valley after dark is to walk beside ghosts, to feel the weight of the past pressing close, and to realize that some towns never truly let go of their dead. Number 13. Columbia, Tuolumne County. Columbia, often called the gem of the southern mines, is unlike most of the gold rush towns scattered across California. Instead of being left to decay into ruins or abandoned completely, Columbia was preserved, restored, and turned into a living history park. Tourists who walk its streets can still see the clapboard buildings, the dusty roads, and the brick saloons that once roared with life during the 1850s. Horse-drawn wagons roll by, costumed interpreters recreate the bustling days of the gold rush, and everything feels as if you have stepped back in time. But for all its charm and historical value, Columbia carries with it something far darker. Beneath the cheerful facade of a museum town, Columbia is haunted, steeped in restless spirits that refuse to leave the saloons, hotels, and homes they once called their own. During its peak, Columbia was one of the richest mining towns in California. Gold poured out of the surrounding hills, bringing in miners, merchants, gamblers, and opportunists from across the globe. With them came prosperity but also violence, greed, and tragedy. Fires swept through the town more than once, destroying buildings and taking lives. Disease, lawlessness, and sudden deaths were common. It is no wonder then that many believe the spirits of Columbia's early days still walk its streets, trapped by the weight of history and their untimely ends. The saloons of Columbia are some of the most active paranormal hotspots. Visitors and workers have reported seeing shadowy figures standing at the bar, only for them to vanish when approached. Glasses rattle on their own, doors swing open and shut without cause, and the faint sound of laughter and piano music has been heard drifting through the air late at night. Some say if you enter certain saloons after dark, you may feel a sudden rush of cold air, as though someone brushed past you, even though no one is there. Others claim to see the figure of a woman in old-fashioned dress sitting quietly in the corner, her head bowed before she fades away. The hotels of Columbia also carry a haunted reputation. Guests have told of waking in the middle of the night to see figures standing at the foot of their beds, only for them to dissolve into thin air. Doors lock and unlock by themselves, and mirrors seem to flicker with faces that are not your own. Some have even claimed to hear children laughing in the hallways, even though no children were staying at the inn. One of the most chilling stories comes from a stagecoach building where countless travelers once passed through on their way to fortune or ruin. Locals say the sound of horses' hooves and stagecoach wheels can still be heard on quiet nights, rolling down the dusty roads long after the last stage left town. Paranormal investigators have recorded voices in this area, some in English, others in broken Chinese or Spanish, reflecting the diversity of people who lived, worked, and died in Columbia. The cemetery just outside town adds another layer of unease. Many of the graves belong to miners who died young, victims of accidents, illness, or violence. Visitors have reported glowing lights moving among the tombstones, the sound of crying, and even the sensation of being watched. On certain nights, some say they have seen entire processions of ghostly figures moving silently through the headstones, dressed in 19th-century clothing, carrying lanterns that cast no real light. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Columbia is the atmosphere itself. Tourists may come during the day and enjoy the historic reenactments, but those who remain after sunset tell a different story. The streets grow unnaturally still, the cheerful energy fades, and the town feels heavy, almost suffocating, as though the past is pressing down on the present. Shadows seem to linger too long, footsteps echo behind you when no one is there, and whispers rise on the night air. It is as if the town itself remembers every tragedy, every violent act, every soul that passed through its saloons and never left. Columbia stands as both a reminder of California's golden history and a testament to the ghosts that history leaves behind. It is a place where you can walk through the past, touch the wooden beams of saloons that once overflowed with life, and perhaps if you are quiet enough, hear the voices of those who never truly departed. For Columbia, the gold rush is not just preserved in buildings and artifacts. It is alive in the restless spirits who haunt its saloons, its hotels, and its very streets. Number 14. Truckee, Nevada County. Truckee, nestled high in the Sierra Nevada mountains, is a town built on perseverance, sacrifice, and tragedy. Today it is known for its charming downtown, its ski resorts, and its close proximity to Lake Tahoe, but beneath the tourist-friendly exterior lies a history stained by hardship. Truckee's past is one of unforgiving winters, devastating fires, and the blood, sweat, and tears of railroad workers who carved through the mountains at impossible odds. Many of those workers never made it home, and it is said that their restless spirits still wander the tracks, the forests, and the old buildings of Truckee. The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad in the 1860s brought thousands of Chinese laborers to the Sierra Nevada. They endured brutal working conditions, carving tunnels through solid granite, often with nothing but hand tools and black powder. Avalanches, accidents, and explosions claimed many lives. When winter storms swept through, workers could be buried alive in snowdrifts that rose higher than rooftops. Entire camps were sometimes lost, their occupants never recovered. Locals say that the tunnels around Truckee still echo with the sounds of picks striking stone, of voices speaking in languages long gone, and of footsteps crunching in the snow when no living soul is near. Some have even reported seeing ghostly lanterns glowing faintly within the dark mouths of abandoned tunnels, swaying gently as if carried by invisible hands. Truckee is also forever tied to the tragic story of the Donner Party, though the main encampment was closer to Donner Lake, only a few miles from town. That winter of 1846–47 is infamous, when pioneers trapped by record snowfall resorted to cannibalism to survive. The mountains swallowed them whole, leaving behind only bones and legends. To this day, visitors around Donner Lake and the surrounding forest report strange sights: gaunt figures moving between the trees, the sound of desperate cries carried on the wind, and sudden drops in temperature that chill to the bone even in summer. Some locals whisper that the spirits of the Donner Party wander endlessly, reliving their torment in an eternal winter that never ends. The historic downtown of Truckee itself carries paranormal weight. The brick buildings, many dating back to the 19th century, were rebuilt after devastating fires that swept through the town multiple times. In the basements and cellars of these buildings, countless tragedies unfolded. Saloon brawls turned deadly, miners lost their fortunes and their lives, and fires claimed victims who never had a chance to escape. Today, shopkeepers and visitors alike report seeing shadowy figures in the corners of their stores, hearing phantom footsteps in empty hallways, and feeling unseen hands brush past them in narrow stairwells. One particularly notorious building was once a mortuary, and employees there tell of lights flickering without cause and objects moving on their own. The Truckee Hotel, one of the most famous landmarks in town, is said to be particularly haunted. Guests have woken in the night to the sound of children running through the halls, though no children were staying at the hotel. Others claim to have seen a woman in old-fashioned clothing standing silently at the end of their bed, only for her to vanish when they blink. Doors slam on their own, radios turn on and off without explanation, and some guests refuse to stay the night after experiencing a sense of suffocating dread. Staff members whisper that the hotel's long history of tragedy, fires, deaths, and hardship has soaked into its walls. Even the railroad tracks that run through town have their share of ghostly encounters. Train engineers have reported seeing figures walking along the tracks, only to disappear as the train draws near. Some describe the figures as men in ragged work clothes, lanterns in hand, their faces hollow and eyes empty. Others say they have seen whole groups of spectral workers trudging silently through the snow, as though still laboring to complete the impossible task of carving a railroad through the mountains. But perhaps the most unnerving aspect of Truckee's hauntings is the way the winters themselves seem alive. Snowstorms roll in suddenly, swallowing the town in white silence. In those moments, when the wind howls through the pines and the snow blinds everything in sight, people say you can hear faint cries of the lost, railroad workers, pioneers, townsfolk, echoing in the storm. The air feels thick with sorrow, as though the mountain itself remembers every life it has taken, and refuses to let them rest. Truckee may today be a place of cozy cabins and holiday cheer, but beneath the modern charm lies a dark history that has never fully released its grip. It is a town haunted not just by ghosts of individuals, but by the collective memory of suffering, sacrifice, and survival. Walk its streets after dark, stand near the railroad tracks at night, or linger too long in the forests around Donner Lake, and you may feel the weight of that history pressing in. For in Truckee the spirits of railroad workers and victims of harsh winters remain, caught between the past and the present, forever tied to the mountains that both gave life and took it away. Number 15. Mendocino County. Mendocino, perched on the rugged cliffs of California's northern coast, is as breathtaking as it is unsettling. The village seems frozen in time, with its Victorian homes, weathered churches, and narrow streets looking out over the endless Pacific. It is a place where the ocean's roar is constant, where fog rolls and so thick it swallows the land whole, and where the line between the living and the dead feels dangerously thin. Beneath the beauty of Mendocino lies a darker story, one of lives claimed by the sea, sailors who never returned, and lights that appear on the cliffs where no living soul dares to stand. The town's history is steeped in tragedy. For centuries, ships bound for San Francisco and beyond passed along these rocky shores. Many never made it. Hidden reefs and violent storms dashed countless vessels against the cliffs, dragging sailors down into the black waters. Locals say their spirits never left. On stormy nights, when waves slam against the rocks and the wind howls like a wounded animal, villagers claim to see ghostly figures staggering up from the surf, men in tattered uniforms, their eyes hollow, their mouths gasping for air they no longer need. Some vanish the moment they are seen. Others drift silently along the cliffs, as if still searching for a safe harbor that does not exist. But the most chilling of Mendocino's mysteries is the phantom lights. For generations, residents and travelers alike have reported glowing orbs dancing along the cliff edges, sometimes moving in pairs like lanterns, other times glowing red as if warning of unseen danger. Fishermen who went out at night swore that following the lights would lead them toward certain doom, straight into the jagged rocks. A few who ignored the warnings never returned. Old legends claim these lights are the spirits of drowned sailors, luring the living to join them in the depths. Others say they are the souls of shipwreck victims, signaling for help that will never come. The Mendocino Hotel, standing proudly in the heart of town, carries its own spectral weight. Guests have reported a woman in Victorian dress, her figure pale and translucent, wandering the hallways at night. Some say she is the widow of a sailor who died at sea, forever waiting for a husband who will never return. Others insist she is tied to the land itself, a guardian of the town's restless dead. Lights flicker, doors open and close without reason, and the scent of seawater sometimes fills the rooms, even when the windows are shut. The cemetery on the edge of the village is another place where the past refuses to rest. Overlooking the Pacific, the grave markers stand crooked and weathered, many belonging to sailors lost offshore. Locals say if you walk there on a foggy night, you will hear the faint sound of bells tolling out at sea, though no ship passes. Others have reported hearing weeping among the graves, soft and mournful, as if the ocean itself grieves for those it claimed. Even the cliffs themselves seem alive with whispers. Travelers walking along the bluffs after sunset often describe a strange sensation like being followed. The crunch of footsteps echoes behind them, but when they turn, no one is there. Some see shapes moving within the fog, figures that vanish as quickly as they appear. The air grows cold, the hairs on the back of the neck stand on end, and the ever-present roar of the sea begins to sound less like waves and more like the cries of the damned. Mendocino is a village that wears two faces. By day it is peaceful, picturesque, and inviting. By night, it is a place of sorrow, haunted by men who died at sea, by women who mourned them, and by lights that call out to the living. The ocean is both the town's greatest beauty and its darkest curse. And as long as waves crash against those cliffs, as long as fog cloaks the land in its ghostly veil, Mendocino will remain a place where the dead walk beside the living, and where the spirits of drowned sailors still haunt the shore. As we close this journey through the haunted towns and villages of California, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: this land is beautiful, but it is also restless. It breathes with stories that are older than us. It hides tragedies that are buried beneath cobblestones, forests, cliffs, and shorelines, and it whispers them back to us when the night grows still. Every town, every village, every forgotten saloon or abandoned shack has its own ghosts, and whether you choose to believe or not, the echoes remain, lingering in the air, etched into the walls and etched into the earth itself. Think back on Bodie, the cursed mining town where thieves paid with their lives and where spectral miners still walk among broken timbers. Imagine Coloma, where the gold rush began, where fortune and blood collided, and where a woman in white drifts endlessly along the riverbank, her sorrow echoing against the stones. Remember Calico, its desert silence broken by phantom voices of men who dug too deep and never returned. Each place we touched carries the weight of history, each one a reminder that the past does not stay buried. California is often seen as a land of dreams, golden sunsets, Hollywood lights, vineyards, coastlines, and wealth. But beneath that beauty there is another California, a California shaped by the men and women who came here seeking fortune, only to find violence, betrayal, or death. Their spirits linger, their energy seeps into the towns they built, into the inns they slept in, into the graveyards where they were laid to rest, and into the air itself. The ghosts of California are not just stories, they are the memory of lives cut short, of ambition twisted into tragedy, of love that never found closure. When you walk through Placerville with its gallows history and restless dead, you may feel a cold hand brush against your arm, a reminder that those who were lynched still demand to be seen. When you stand in Murphy's, you may hear phantom stagecoaches on roads where wheels no longer roll. In Julian, the sound of laughter in saloons may not always come from the living, and in Nevada City, shadowy forms may linger in the corners of old theaters, as if the final curtain never fell. Each village is alive with death, each one more than just a name on a map, each one a story still unfolding. And then there is Shasta, where prisoners and townsfolk remain trapped between worlds, Downeyville, where injustice left spirits chained to the earth, Weaverville, where pioneers and Chinese immigrants walk side by side in death as they once did in life, and Sonora, where crying children remind you that not every ghost is tied to gold, some are tied to grief that will never fade. Grass Valley stretches the feeling further, its Victorian streets heavy with energy that refuses to sleep, its miners and spectral women wandering endlessly. Columbia is preserved as if time stopped, but the ghosts that move through its saloons and hotels prove that time never truly ends. Truckee carries the memory of harsh winters and railroad workers who gave their lives in unforgiving conditions. And finally Mendocino, a coastal village where drowned sailors and phantom lights call out from the cliffs, where the ocean itself becomes a haunting presence. These towns and villages remind us that California is not only a place of sunshine and wealth, it is also a graveyard of dreams, a resting place for the countless souls who never found peace. The gold rush built cities, but it also destroyed men. The ocean brought ships, but it also claimed them. The mountains promised fortune, but they demanded sacrifice. In every place we explored tonight, there is one thread connecting them all: the living still walk with the dead. Now comes the question: what happens if you visit these towns? What happens if you step into Bodie after dark? If you walk Placerville streets alone? If you check into a hotel in Julian or Mendocino? Will you hear the voices? Will you see the figures? Will you feel the temperature drop? Or will you dismiss it all as superstition? The choice is yours, but the towns remain and the spirits wait. Maybe you have already felt it, maybe you have driven through one of these villages and noticed a shadow in your rearview mirror that should not have been there. Maybe you heard footsteps when the street was empty, maybe you caught the faint scent of smoke in an abandoned building, or the sound of water dripping where no pipe runs. Ghosts are not always seen, they are felt, they are sensed, and they are remembered even when no one speaks their names. California is alive with beauty, but beauty often hides danger, and danger often leaves scars. These haunted towns and villages are scars of a past that still bleeds through, scars of people who worked, lived, and died in ways most of us cannot imagine. The land remembers, the buildings remember, and when the night falls, the ghosts remember too. So the next time you find yourself in one of these places, do not dismiss the chill in the air, do not ignore the whisper in the silence, do not laugh off the shadows moving in your peripheral vision. Pay attention, listen, and respect the presence that still lingers. You are not alone, and perhaps you never were. If you enjoyed this journey into California's most haunted towns and villages, imagine where else the road may lead. Imagine the haunted cemeteries of Mexico, the ghostly forests of Pennsylvania, the roads that stretch endlessly through deserts and mountains, each carrying its own legends, each holding its own secrets. The world is vast, but the dead travel with us everywhere we go. Like this story, share it with those who crave the thrill of the unknown, and subscribe if you wish to walk further into the shadows. Every week, we dive into new places, new stories, and new encounters that will test your courage and keep you awake long after the lights go out. The haunted towns of California will remain long after you finish listening, they will remain when you sleep, they will remain when you travel, and they will remain when you forget them. Because ghosts do not vanish when we stop speaking of them, they grow louder, waiting for the moment when you step into their world without knowing it. So, The next time you drive through an old mining town, the next time you pass a crumbling saloon or glance at a cliffside village with the ocean crashing below, remember this story. Remember the miners, the pioneers, the sailors, the families, and the countless souls who never left. And ask yourself this: what would you do if the shadows reached out to you? What would you do if you heard your name whispered from the dark? Because the ghosts of California are waiting, and they are never far behind.